I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson. We're picking up here with the afternoon session of our conference on stress and security, and we're going to go around the circle and explore some healthy tools that are available in your stress type.
We're going to stick with stress. I pitched this earlier, that obviously you're seeing the negatives, and it may even feel like there's something uncomfortable here in terms of, oh yes, this is what I do when I'm stressed out, and I don't like it, and this is exactly how you should feel, right? Because a lot of times this is the low side of stress, and the question for a lot of us is, what does it look like to get out of this space? Because things break and problems aren't solved, and sometimes you are stressed out, and so what does it look like to go high? And that's where we're going. I have Daniel Mothershed, and I have a good friend named David Bissell. David Bissell is a 4. For Mothershed and Bissell, when they talk, Bissell's a little bit older than Daniel. He is speaking as somebody who is a more mature 4. Daniel's a 4, Bissell's a 4. And Bissell can talk to him about being a 4 and what 4-ness looks like. When I talk to David Bissell, what I experience is somebody who is in my... What I experience is somebody who is in my stress number, who lives in my stress number, who is a remarkably healthy person. And he's a delight to be around because when I go into 4 space, I don't know what to do. What does it look like to live in this? I don't actually want to be in this space. But in conversations with David, it ends up being someone who is speaking insightfully into my life because he lives in that space and he knows what it looks like to misstep and he knows what it looks like to thrive. And he can just, you might think about it as a landscape. He can quickly identify the landscape of 4-ness. There is something about just being familiar with the terrain, with the territory. This is what it looks like to live in 4 space. This is where the destruction is. Here's the pitfalls. This is the light that you kind of need. Here's the crevasses, right? And he knows the ways out of the low side of 4. He's just very aware of this is what my unhealthy side for him, this is what his unhealthy side looks like. And Jeff, you should avoid that when you're in these sorts of spaces, because he can also elevate the glories of being a 4. He can also elevate, this is where the beauties are, right? He knows what it feels like to be comfortable in his skin, as it were. And even though things might be real cloudy for me in that space, navigation-wise, he can be incredibly helpful. Some of you have friends who are on the lines. TJ is married to someone on his line. TJ and Joni's a 6. And so when in their relationship, Joni lives in 6 space. And TJ, in going there, she's already a healthy foundational presence in some ways in that space. When stress numbers are called disintegration, this is what gets missed, is no, but there's a healthy side to all the numbers. And so clearly there must be a healthy side to your stress number. Well, what does that look like? Let's find it. I bet you that's a better place to land, than the unhealthy mess that we just looked at. So notice this, and I would love for you to internalize this. Sometimes your most resilient, most insightful, most self-actualized self actually comes out when you thrive in your stress number. It's when you tap into those tools that you awaken, right? I mentioned it before, but a lot of times the movies that we love most, character wants something, overcomes an obstacle, they get thrown into stress, things are breaking, and suddenly something comes alive in the person in that space, and we pay good money for the popcorn and the movie ticket, and we buy the DVD later. And this, all because we love seeing human beings who excel in those spaces. And so this is a huge central idea for us, just to return to something I want to pitch over and again. When we might say, what is the target of Enneagram? But even what's the target of being, like, doing that work, your internal work on yourself and your soul? The target is balance. It's finding something like the healthy mixture of action and thinking and feeling. And oftentimes our stress number and our security number are part of that. It's us pivoting into those spaces. So you should think of yourself in your type as one seeking to balance. You'll notice on this picture that the 2s and 7s can have a hard time getting into either thinking for 2s or feeling for 7s. But for everyone else, and we'll talk about that in a minute, by the way, 2s and 7s, we're both over here. All the rest of us, we have an anchor. We have some way to push into each of the triads along one of the lines, and that's worth noting. Big goal is balance. Big goal is balance. The goal, 2s, 3s, and 4s, is not getting attention. The goal, 5s, 6s, and 7s, is not feeling safe. The goal, 8s, 9s, and 1s, is not being in control or not being controlled by others. The goal is to balance. That's what the game looks like. Conflict for all of us. Conflict is unavoidable. Sorry about
Don't
that.
say that.
Setbacks are unavoidable. Stress is unavoidable. You hear this with a lot of people who are in sports ball, who are coaches. We'll say the scoreboard is, at the end of the day, it's really irrelevant. Losers focus on winning. Those who win focus on technique. Those who win focus on execution. Those who win take the really crappy hand that they've been dealt, and they play it well. This is a quote from Phil Jackson out of his book 11 Rings, because he won 11 championships. It says, at the start of every season, I always encouraged players to focus on the journey rather than the goal. What matters most is playing the game the right way, having the courage to grow as human beings as well as players. And when you do that, rings take care of themselves. It's how winning works. It's not about the score. It's about how you play the game. And that's true of life. It's like knowing how you are coming to the game, focusing on your technique, focusing on balance, focusing on these are the virtues I need to implement. Wisdom, moderation, courage, push towards making things right. These are very, very valuable throughout the history of Western thought. Being a flourishing human being, that's the win. That's the goal. And being a flourishing human being can take place in the midst of conflict. When you flourish as a human soul, when you play your hand well in the midst of conflict, that is the win. Like sometimes stress feels so negative to a lot of us. It feels so negative. We don't realize that this is you at your best self. You know what I mean? And being able to name that really matters, because otherwise you're going low. But if you can name what it looks like to go high when you are stressed, woo, like that is the flourishing human life, is people who can tap into that. So that's where we're going, embodying the best sides of your stress number, your security number, your wings, and of course your center. That's how balance works, and that's what healthy human life looks like. So we're going to jump back into looking at each of the types. This is trying to get some language around what the high side of your stress number looks like. It's almost like, well, what is the answer to me being stressed out? It's our best attempt with what we got, so buckle up. A couple footnotes. These are worth writing down. These are more principles that might inform some of the stuff that we're going to hit. Again, your stress number, don't avoid it. What you need to do is think of your stress number as something useful. It's a tool. Using it as a tool can be incredibly helpful. Part of the function of this tool is to move you back to center. And we're going to come to that over and over again. You're stressed out. You use tools to deal with the stress and the problems. But the function of the tool is to help you get back to the center of your type. So for me, I'm going to use 4 tools to remind me of my identity, to get in touch with my emotional life, to get all that shored up so that I can move back into my body and do the thing I'm made for. And that's the function of that for me. Lastly, for some, our stress number is going to elevate our repressed center. So you're going to see this sometimes, that the place where you're repressed, you don't do productive thinking, feeling, or doing. For some of us, that's actually where productive doing comes into play. So for 9s, when they go to 6, productive doing is going to emerge. Sometimes our stress number taps us into a different orientation to time. So for specifically 6s mentioned this a couple times, their inability to get into the past. They can't remember that they've been successful in the past. But in 3 space, they do remember, this is what I've done. And that can be incredibly helpful. And lastly, sometimes, actually with all the numbers, when you move into stress, you're taking on a different stance. So I'm an earner, I'm a reactive type. 1s, 2s, 6s are reactive, but I move to withdrawn space. And that can be a great tool for me in moving back to center. We'll play that out specifically with each of the types. These are just principles. Anything we're saying there?
I like this idea. We came up with this analogy about falling into a net. Like stress is like falling into a net. And when you fall, you don't really have any choice about the fact that you're landing in a net. But if you can do this, grasp this in a healthy way, in a conscious way, as you start to become aware of it, while you're falling, you can go, oh yeah, there's a net down there. And there's a bunch of stuff in that net that I need and can use and will be really useful. It's not just to save your life, but it's also tools that will make you a better person if you become aware of them and start to grab them. As opposed to just falling, there's tools here that you can grab onto.
What we're going to do with these is we're just going to fly through each of the numbers. But as we did before, at the very end, once we go through all the numbers, we'll take another 10, 15 minutes to talk to each other about our number. So just starting with the 1s, it's a quote from a 1. Withdrawing helps silence my manic need to be fixed, to fix or be productive. You'll notice the change in stance, and you'll also notice the change in motive. But some of the things that 1s can get at 4 space is withdrawing for this internal attention, right? I need to know how I feel and who I am so that I can then do good in the world. In 4 space, 1s who are present focused are going to be able to engage their past. They're going to get some identity and perspective there. In 4 space, they can elevate beauties and broken things without feeling like they need to fix them right now. And that can be incredibly helpful for 1s to say, I'm done fixing things for now. I need to just appreciate the world as it is. I realize that sounds like heresy, right? But 4s are able to stop and release present concerns, and that can likewise be very freeing for 1s in 4 space.
There's a sense of self because 1s, especially because 1s struggle the most of the types with that internal critic, that voice or that committee or whatever else that's constantly rehashing everything that happened, everything that you've done, and saying you didn't do this correctly, or you could have done this better, or you should have said this instead of that, etc. The critic is constantly beating up 1s, and that move to 4 can allow the self to silence the critic. Allow the self to say, hey, wait a second. I'm a beautiful creation, and I do a lot of things really, really well, and that critic is just a jerk. Like that's a tool that 1s can get from 4.
Yeah. I'm beautiful with all my flaws.
Yeah. Flaws are fine.
Right.
Flaws are fine.
2s. I create new rhythms and habits to break myself out of unhealthy cycles. Very active. More independent decision making, engaging your head. Decisiveness about the kind of person that I want to be. You'll notice the attention towards self here in this quote. Again, the move is towards doing and assertion, being aggressive. 2s in 8 space are going to protect themselves. And that may feel selfish, as was kind of said earlier, and it's not. in order to love people as yourself, you need to love yourself. If you're abusive to yourself, it's going to come out always awkwardly. But protecting yourself and protecting others can go hand in hand. 8s can move in spite of other people, and that can be a tool that 2s can tap into, that sometimes focusing on other people's emotional life isn't your job. It's not yours to do right now. And moving matters, right? Come on. Amen from the left corner. 8s can dismiss the unhealthy emotions of others. This actually is an option, that some people are actually toxic human beings and you don't need to deal with their unhealthy emotional life. And 8s can engage future problems, and that's a space that 2s don't have access to. 6s don't have access to the past. 2s don't have access to the future, but in 8 space, you can take on some future problem solving.
That word boundaries, I'm kind of surprised that it's the very last word and it only appears once, because in almost every single 2 who responded, both healthy and unhealthy stress, one of the things they get from 8s is boundaries. Because 2s are not very good at making their own boundaries. Everyone needs their help, and they can help everyone. And in 8 space, one of the things that they pick up is, that person doesn't need my help, that person doesn't deserve my help, and that's okay. And I actually can't help this person. And like, creating boundaries is a very valuable thing that, like, 8s don't even understand why people can't create boundaries. And 2s pick up a lot of that kind of behavior when you're conscious of it, when you do it, when you're not just reacting, but when you actually grab onto those tools. There's so much good about standing up for yourself that can come from that 8 space.
Bang. All right, we're moving now. 3s, taking time to rest, slow down, helps bring me back into my normal self. You'll notice the withdrawal. You'll also know that the withdrawal tool is being used so that I can move back to my normal self. Resting is not a failure, 3s. Taking care of yourself in your inner life isn't a failure. Insisting on physical calm is something 9s do naturally, and that's a tool available. Withdrawing into spaces, physical spaces, your spaces, spaces where you really feel like you can especially access your emotional core. Very helpful to identify those spaces and intentionally go there. That can be a win if you need that kind of language for it. But withdrawing into those spaces is something 9s do naturally. Prioritizing rest is an accomplishment, and 9s do that naturally. Being able to look at their past, looking at the past in terms of past tools. 9s can look at their past for grounding, self-understanding. You don't need to just look at the past in terms of, here are where relationships failed and I need to do better in the future. You can look at the past and find grounding, self-understanding. This is who your authentic self is.
And one thing that 9s and also particularly 8s are really good at is letting things go. And this is something that 3s can really get easily. Like when things have gone badly, when you're failing, when stress happens, man, it's nice to just go take a nap instead. And sometimes that's okay. That's a great tool, because you may not be able to solve that problem. You may not be able to do that thing successfully, and just letting it go is okay. The one quote says, snapping out of the hamster wheel of trying to overplan to control what I really can't. 3s love spending their energy on things that especially things that other people think they can't do. And being able to just step back and say, that's not something that needs my energy, and I'm not going to do that anymore.
It's true. In 9 space, you cut off the future. There's no future in 9 space. That's good. The 4s. Quote from 4. When I'm stressed, I become more service-oriented because I want to escape my thoughts. It's very helpful in bringing me out of whatever funk I'm in. Sometimes turning your attention away from yourself during times of stress can be a productive, active, holistic way of embracing all of yourself. Two's heart will go outward. That can be valuable, pushing into that for grounding. Again, maybe thinking about with what was said before in mind in terms of sometimes people will take advantage of fours in that space. Perhaps thinking about service as a grounding action can be valuable. You're going to move from a past orientation. Fours live in the past. But moving into two space allows you to be present. You go present both in your stress number and in your security number. And it's just worth naming those moves that you're using in two space. You're going to be using some present tools to do some stuff to fix the world that aren't accessible in four space. Twos are going to engage their bodies more in two space. And that can be getting into action, can get you out of the spiral of melancholy, of self-criticism, of depressed thinking. And there's something about caring about the people around you and investing in them such that there is connection and a love is established. That can be a valuable thing, it seems to me, in two space for fours.
When you help others, you can't help helping yourself. That's a song from the musical Avenue Q. It's great. The most of the fours that responded in this, there was very much the reaction is so much about going outside of themselves to try and it's really good to help other people, but also it's good for your soul to focus on other people sometimes. And when you are really stressed out, sometimes that stress can cause a real intense stagnation. And fours can get stuck because of the way that their mind, the feeling, the thoughts kind of process works. And just focusing instead on someone else's needs can help sort of snap you back into what's real and what's good, and can also give you a sense of, one person said, when I am helping other people, I feel appreciated, and now you have value, and now there's something clearer there than while you were spinning trying to figure out your own place in the universe. Now someone else can give you some of that validation.
Fun. This was funny to me. Like when the fours responded, we printed it off, and it's like 4 pages of material on how they felt when they went to stress. And then we said, what does it look like the high side? We got 2 paragraphs. Like, it was very, very small in terms of here's the optimistic take on stress. So like, I don't know, but we could brood about this a little bit more. I thought that was funny. Fives. Found focus on positives I can't function. So when I'm stressed, I try to intentionally choose more. There's something about accessing the positives in 7 space for fives, which, again, quite helpful. So some of the high side tools, 7's minds, as I said a handful of times, they're just awake with numerous possibilities. Tapping into that can get you out of the singular focus, broaden your thinking towards multiple things. That can be very helpful in stress. There is the aggression and assertion and activeness that comes in 7, and I know that you all know that, in terms of actually getting into your bodies and using your energy. 5s are going to be action repressed, and in 7 space, that's a place where you're engaging your physical self. 7s are going to use planning tremendously, and that is something that 5s can utilize and get into, what would you call that? It's future problem solving can become part of your rhythms. And then, of course, the optimism. The permission to engage things that are enjoyable and new and fun, like those are options in 7 space. And this, Sarah and I had a conversation about this last night, that this is not on the radar for why I do anything, right? It's are you going to do this because it's fun? No, I'm doing it because I'm going to learn something. And in 7 space, the enjoyment can be something that can get elevated.
There's also one thing that's really important to know about sevens is that like they want to live their best life, but they also want everyone else to live their best life. So it's not just that they're trying to have the most fun; it's sort of trying to bring everyone else into the most fun too. And when fives can pick up on that, normally reserved and standoffish and like wanting to be the observant outsider fives can step into a place where it's like, this situation is really tense and I'm going to tell a few jokes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to help bring the mood up because that's what's good for everyone.
It's a good call. Sixes. Sixes, again, are going to move into that feeling triad. The quote here, I try to reassure myself by reminding myself of past accomplishments as well as positive self-talk. Those tools at 3 are really helpful, that you have won in the past, and you need to be reminded that you've won in the past. And those are, sixes don't have access to the past the way unless they're pulling from their stress and security number. Some things that sixes have, the tools that, sixes can access these tools at 3. There is the self-confidence at 3 that can be incredibly helpful, especially since sixes often doubt themselves so much. There is setting your doubts and feelings aside. They don't need to matter right now in order to get the job done. There's the invitation to others of positive feedback. Sometime the tribe that you've invested in so heavily for so long needs to tell you that you're doing a great job. And sometimes it requires you saying, hey, you need to tell me that I'm doing a great job. And that actually is a healthy thing for sixes to do. It's assertive, it's out front, it wants attention, and that attention can be incredibly stabilizing so that sixes know that they're valuable. And of course, threes understand the priorities of others. There's a relational radar that sixes can pick up on so that the things they care about, they understand what the tribe cares about emotionally.
There's sixes don't really like a lot of the attention most of the time, and they don't like the recognition. They want to do what's expected of them, and that's okay. And they're happy to be a team player, and sometimes the team takes advantage of that and ignores the contribution of the six. And in that stress place, the six can. That we're not asking you to stand up on a stage and demand that everyone pay attention to you, but when you know that your boss is mistreating you, the stress move for the 3 can come back and say, hey, yes, I'm actually really good at this, and if you don't appreciate me, I will go somewhere else. That's fine, because I'm more valuable. Because threes think they're awesome. They possibly have tricked themselves into believing that they're awesome, but they're fairly certain about how good they are, the things that they're doing. And sixes naturally don't think that way. And so the tool that you can pick up there is you know what, I am actually really good at this, and I really expect to be treated that way. I expect to be recognized for the work that I've done for you. I also think that the sixes and 3s share that there's a lot of stuff to be done and just doing the work to get it done. And I think that when sixes enter this stress place, it's hard for them they don't naturally cut corners. Well, 3s might sometimes, and it's easier to just let's check all the things on the list. They don't have to be perfect, and that's okay. This is something that I struggle with my spouse a lot, because she's a 6 and things have to be done perfectly. And it's just do it a little bit and it'll be some done, and then we can move on. It's fine. Just check it off the list. And that's something that you can pick up from the 3 is that get the task done. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's true for you too.
That's true. Just so it's clear also, 3s, I was fully aware that yours is the best table, just between us. 7s. In one space, this 7 says, I find self-discipline, self-control. I become amazingly organized and miss no detail, but I can only do this when I'm stressed. Some of the things 7s can pick up as one tools is prioritizing their actions. Diffuse to this is what's most important. There's judgment that's taking place there's value judgments taking place in action. It's not just how can I bounce or how can I outrun something. Being fully present, as you all will know. Moving from I'm in the future all the time. I'm scheming to moving back and being here now is a tool you can get at one. Engaging specifics can be very important in terms of here are the details that need to be engaged. And ones can reflect very hard on the negatives, and that's not necessarily a negative. That actually can be incredibly valuable to engage. And this is where elevating your feeling repression can be valuable in that you're going to actually engage those negative attributes in yourself perhaps and do some business with them, do some repair work at one.
Yeah, big picture sevens love to start the ball rolling, but they don't necessarily need to see the project all the way to completion. And sometimes you do need to see the project all the way to completion, and that is a tool that you can get at ones. Because ones, the job's not done until it's done, right? And sometimes you got to do the work, and that is a tool that you get from one. That perspective of like, just sit down, finish the job, do what has to be done to get through and finish. Sevens struggle with that a lot, and that's a great tool available at one.
Eights go to 5, is moving into their thinking center. As 8 says, I naturally reach out to 5 space when I'm feeling stressed and need help focusing, prioritizing, and accessing rational thought. We hit this a handful of times actually when we were talking earlier, but some of the 5 tools are the ability to pause. You don't need to be finding your value in what you're accomplishing. Pausing can be incredibly helpful. Being able to detach, live open-handedly is something that 5s are able to do until it's time for you to re-engage and act. Again, that move in withdrawal for perspective, real valuable for 8s at times. And perhaps it's worth giving yourself permission to say, I'm not just going to withdraw for a short time and then move back. Sometimes, and this is true of 3s and 7s as well, the aggressive types, perhaps giving yourself permission to take a step back from assertive energy can be a really helpful balancing, revitalizing kind of move. And again, engaging the mind, thinking hard before getting stuff done. The objectivity you can find at 5 is helpful.
Yeah, detachment and objectivity was a big thing that we heard from a lot of the 8s responding in here. And one person said, it's been very helpful releasing the need for control. And I would add, it's probably helpful releasing the illusion of control. And that is a perspective that you sometimes can only get from 5, is that the world is much bigger than you are, and you're not the one in charge of it. And you need perspective. You need a little bit more objectivity. And there's so many good tools that's available if you stop.
9s. 9s are going to move into thinking.
Cool.
Were you still going?
That pause was intentional. It was a dramatic pause.
Oh.
But I didn't really have a plan for what was coming next. I just planned to the pause. So it's great. We can move on now.
Commitment, loyalty to others elevates my action, gives me a reason to stay and see things through. Sometimes a similar problem for 9s is what the 4s were communicating in terms of 4s going to stress. Now they're in 2 space and everybody appreciates that they're being helpful. Some of us who live and work with 9s end up, oh, now you're acting because it's stress and now we're going somewhere. And that's not necessarily something to take advantage of.
It's all right.
I mean, between me and you. It's like the thing that 9s can grab at 6 ends up being that you're going to earn, you're going to move, you're going to do some stuff, and especially you're going to do some stuff for the sake of others, for the sake of the tribe that you care about. 6s make future problems a priority. This is something that 9s don't have access to. They don't have an anchor in the future. And so you can find a future focus in 6 space. Sixes are going to react to others' needs. It's, again, similar for fours in terms of reacting in 2 space. Nines are going to react in 6 space to others' needs, and often with urgency. And sixes are going to stabilize by doing some stuff. And that's something that nines can pick up as a tool.
I didn't think about the fact that we've been planning this for months, right? We've been planning this event for months. And I did not think about lunch until last night at 11 o'clock. And it caused pure anxiety. But when I am in good, healthy, when I'm recognizing those tools that are available at 6, like it's not all going to be okay. And there's sometimes something that you have to do to make a plan so that it doesn't break. Or when it does break, you're prepared. Nines, it's really easy for us to just let the world happen around us. And sometimes there's stuff that we have to do to prepare, to fix things around us, to make sure that people know we're still here and still trying to be part of the team or part of whatever. We need to step up and do something.
Bang. Love for you to turn to the people around you in your group. It's kind of a short list of some things worth talking about. What did you hear there? What's something you can push into? What can you say? These are tools I can implement in my life. Those are worthwhile discussions. So let's spend 10 minutes on that. Go.
Now, this is a good place to pause. Next time, we'll be looking at the high side of our security type. What it looks like when we're healthy and feeling like we're in the groove.
Hey, as always, we would be incredibly grateful if you would give us some stars on Spotify and iTunes. This helps other people find our material. And secondly, if this material has meant a lot to you, there are ways to share it with those you care about. Some people know about Enneagram, and you could simply share this conference or this podcast with them. But for some of us, we have friends who are just getting into Enneagram or know nothing about it. TJ and I have created a podcast platform for just those people. It's called Start Here. If you look it up on iTunes, it is green and white. If you look it up on Spotify, it's also green and white. You can share it from both those podcast platforms. In fact, it's on all the platforms to my knowledge. This is specially designed for people to jump in, to take our type of test, which is a narrative test, which is the only type of test that we really affirm. And it gets people into finding their type, exploring their type, getting the basics for their type, and showing them how to use Enneagram. Lastly, throughout 2023, we're getting together on Zoom once a month with about 20 or so folks to talk about relationships. If you're into this and would just like to explore these ideas with TJ, with me, with others, we would love to have you. Very easy to get signed up. Just go to aroundthecircle.org and click on events. There's a way to sign up for our Zoom events there. And, we'll email you notifications. And these have been incredibly helpful for me. And I hope for lots of others. The intro music, as always, is by The Collection. And this outro music is by the great Brian Claxton. If you love this podcast and want to support us, you can always do so on Patreon. And again, if you are one of the approximately 2,000 listeners we have who have not yet given us some stars, it's your time. We would love your help. So that's what I got. TJ doesn't got anything else. And I'm Jeff Cook. And who you aren't isn't interesting.